And so we can go ahead and get started here. This is Introduction to Create Lists. I know a few of you have probably already taken this session before, and I've added a few new wrinkles to it I think will be worth your time. But in general, it's going to be covering the same ground that we had covered before with some of this Create List material. But there are some new things that we just got with the newest version of Sierra that I'll point out to you and you may not have noticed quite yet. Okay, so before we get started and start talking about Create Lists, let's take a look at the agenda for today. First of all, before I get into that, I just want to point out that there's a website for all the information we're going to be talking about today. It's available at www.mcfliss.org/createlists. On your screen there, you should see that particular website. I've updated a number of things the last couple of days here. I'll just go to that quickly. This is the web page that we're referring to. And on the top link here is a Create List manual that I recently updated yesterday. It includes all the new things that we've are going to be talking about with regard to some of the Boolean operators that have been added since I last did this session. So that's the website. As far as the agenda goes, we're going to talk a little bit about what Create Lists is. One of the most important things we'll talk about today is things to know before you get started. That's a real nice typo there. But things to know that, oh, sorry.
The Central Library will be closing.
Sorry about that. I had to mute myself. The Ben Franklin dinner is being held tonight, so that is a lot of folks working behind the scenes here, and they're making announcements every hour. So we may get another one at 3 o'clock, just so you're aware. So as far as the agenda goes, one of the more important things we're going to cover today is thinking about your list, thinking about the data you need to get out of Sierra before you start messing around and create lists to begin with. That's one of the more important things when I do this session, it's probably the most important thing you need to realize is that you need to put a little bit of thought into some of these lists, particularly if it's very complicated, and we'll go into that. We'll talk about, obviously, the new additions with Sierra. In addition to those operators that were just added, there are new fields for holds and finds that we did cover in the last, the 2014 session, but I have a little bit more information about those. And the majority of the time we're going to take today is going through and actually creating a list. We will select the range and create criteria, and then take a long time looking at Boolean conditions, including the new ones, and also the nuances of creating a list, the things you may not use out all the time, but are very useful in creating your review files. We'll take some time in putting this information to Excel. We'll look at McFliss master lists, the ones that we've continued to develop and maintain on the system, either on a weekly or monthly basis or quarterly basis. And then we'll wrap up things and do a few exercises. So that's the agenda that we've got planned, very similar to what we've done in the past, but there's new wrinkles that we've added. Okay, so what is Create Lists? Generally, it's a powerful report generator. It is a way in which you can basically create lists of records from Sierra, either bibliographic, item, patron, order, and lately what has been added is also vendor records, things like that. Anything that's a record-based data can be extracted using create lists. And the important thing to remember with create lists is that it's not a real-time or dynamic list that's going to be changing all the time. Once you've created that list, it's simply a list of the record numbers, be it bibliographic, item, or order records. It's just capturing the numbers. So any of the data that's in those records may change. So the coding that you may be searching on today may be changed tomorrow. For example, like the status of an item, or the a paid date within an order record, or a mat type within a bibliographic record. Those things can always change, even though the list that you created yesterday was valid at the time you created it. So it's basically a snapshot of the data at the time that you create it, and it doesn't change from one day to the next. Whatever, if you create a list today, it's going to retain that list of records the next day, even though the data may change within it. And for our purposes, it's a management tool that helps maintain records and database integrity. You'll notice a lot of the master lists are created for this very purpose, so that we can maintain a clean database. And I'm sure many of you are using a create list for this purpose, maybe to find coding errors, make collection development decisions. These are all things that create list was intended to do. Okay, so before you begin, like I mentioned before, this is probably the more important thing, one of the most important things you need to do before you start messing around with create lists. First off, you need to go back and look at the file assignments for all the mixed list libraries. And there is on the website that I've created, I'll go back to that, there is a link that will tell you the create list file assignments for each library. This is on that web page that we talked about earlier. If I click on that, it's going to take me to this screen right here. And currently we have 360 review files available for libraries to use. Some of those are reserved for certain purposes, and generally the first I would generally say the first 100 or so are reserved for specific libraries and or departments for their use. Every library location within the system has been reserved one file that's 5,000 max records and another file that's 20,000 max records. And the file assignments are those you see here. So everyone, generally in alphabetical order. We've run into problems in the past where people have been squatting on some of these early review files, the ones that are in the top 50, for example, where people just indiscriminately choose a review file and start searching on it. If I find those, I generally just move them off so that that library that has the reserved spot can use them. What a lot of libraries have done recently, and I'll show you this, go to create lists here. Up in this area here where you see many of the reserved files, you'll see that there are a couple of libraries that have just put in, there's nothing, for example, in file 10, but it's reserved for Center Street. So people don't get tempted to use that Center Street file. And all you have to do in this case is simply click on the rename button here in the upper right-hand corner. Even if there's nothing in there, even if it's an empty file, you can still rename it. And then when you're ready to use it, you can just simply click on search records to start the process. So that's one thing that a couple of libraries have done. You'll see Hales Corners has also done this. They don't have any current files run in 25 and 26, but these are their assigned files, so they're trying to eliminate the squatting factor, so to speak. That sounds really terrible. But in any case, the rest of these files are reserved for MICFLIS. I generally don't care if someone's using those files, but there's a few of them that we use for master lists, for example, for like the 5-year no circ. Those are all over the place, but these files in 73 through 85, we generally use at MICFLIS. There's a couple for Library Investigator at MPL, purchase alert files, possible patron deletes, and overdue items file. Those are generally reserved for those, and you'll see that those are generally occupied, so you don't really have to worry about those too much. But just consider this before you start choosing a file in which to search. The next thing that, and probably the most important thing you need to consider when you're starting a review file is what information you need to get out of Sierra. Sierra has a lot of data in it. In some cases, it's impossible to get through crate lists and you have to use a SQL query. But for most of the day-to-day data-driven information, things that you need, you can generally get those out of the system using crate lists if you're just looking for lists of records that match certain criteria. So you have to think about what you need to get out of the system. And another thing to consider is that crate lists relies on your ability to think logically to isolate sets of data and connect them using appropriate operators and grouping. So when I'm confronted with a complex problem, like let's just look at, I think the next slide here might show this. You know, when I have a complex problem like the one displayed on the screen here, I generally have to think about breaking this topic or this statement into a number of different pieces and using keywords identifying certain sections of the database that I want to join together using operators like and or or. So in this case, let's just use this as an example, this Venn diagram. I want to find all Oak Creek DVD and CD items added to the database since the beginning of 2014. Well, in this case, what you can do is break out the fact that you're looking for a certain ownership location, which is in this case Oak Creek. You're looking for a specific format, DVD and CD items, and you've got a time frame that you're also looking at. So you have to somehow take all that information, break it apart for one, and then join them all together using, in this case, it would be an and statement between those. So each one of these circles that you see here are generally going to be some basic criteria statement that you would use in crate lists. So I want all items added since the beginning of 2014, and they have to be Oak Creek items, and they have to be DVD or CD items. And this is going to be kind of our query or example that we're going to use to illustrate how you can use crate lists. Your particular queries may be more complex or simple than this, but generally that's how I look at these things. I break them apart by keywords or statements within the statement that I'm looking at. Okay, so let's go back a step. You also have to consider the size of the file that you need. If you're looking for a specific patron or a specific set of very small items, let's go back to our crate list. You can always judge the size of these files by the number of max records that you're going to be using. So if I'm looking for a specific patron or maybe a family, looking for a phone number, I'm not going to be using a 50,000 max record review file. I'm going to use something a little bit smaller, probably close to either 5,000. 5,000 is pretty small for our system, but there are 1,000 max record review files, and you can also find 2,500, 3,000, and there's some even smaller, 500, for example. A lot of people like to use these. Instead of scrolling down the list, you can always just click on the column header, and that will sort by the max record size. So you can see there's not that many 500 max record review files available, but this is what you would use for something like that. If you're searching the entire database for item records and you want a very large group, you would use something closer to maybe 50,000 to 100,000. Those are fairly popular. We have a lot of those currently available. Okay, so I'm gonna click over here. Okay, and then you also have to consider the record format that you're storing. So if you want to get, for example, patron record data out of create lists, you're not going to be using a stored record type. We'll look at that in a second, of bibliographic records. There's no connection between bib records and patron records. There's connections between patron records and items, but there's no connection between a title record and a patron. You don't check out bib records, you check out item records. So that's the type of thing that you have to consider as well, that there's connections that are taking place that you can leverage within create list to to get the data that you need, but you have to consider the record format you're storing. And we'll take a look at that in a second. And lastly, you just want to make sure you're familiar with the create list main window, and we'll take a look at the filter sort combination here. I'm going to go back to that website because there's a really good slide that I wanted to show you, this PDF file. Okay, so this is taking from that manual that I was referring to before. And this just shows you kind of the layout of the create list window. All the things that used to be in Millennium at the top here as tabs are now moved over to the left-hand side of the screen as buttons. I guess they're still tabs, but most of the other things that have been there in the past with Millennium are still here. The buttons along the top are the ones that have the most functionality. The status bar doesn't do a whole lot in Sierra as far as create list goes. There's not a whole lot of information that shows up down there. In Millennium, there used to be like a running tally, or it would give you some kind of progress on that, but not anymore, not with Sierra. And then they've moved a couple of the functions that used to be, I think these functions in the toolbar have been there the whole time, but I think there's a couple differences with Sierra in terms of stopping or canceling a file. And in the old Millennium version, you would be able to stop a file, and it would show you what was currently in it at the time that you stopped it. When you use cancel now in Sierra, it does not allow you to do any of that. It basically empties the file immediately if you click cancel. So that's kind of a negative in terms of my view here. But this is basically how create list is laid out. And you can look at this other information. We'll cover some of this a little bit later. The other thing I wanted to mention too before we get too far into this is this little drop-down menu or window at the top. This is where you can actually show the status for files within Sierra, the 360 that we have. So if you wanted to find all the empty files, this is the one that I use all the time to find empty files. You would just change this to empty, and then you can see all the available empty files. We have quite a few right now, comparatively speaking. So that's a way that you can find the empty files. If you wanted to find those in progress, we don't have anything currently there, or complete, which is quite a few of them, you would use this drop down to find that. So that's basically what that would be useful for, is to find all the empty files that you can use. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about this kind of the new portion of the presentation. Some of the additions with Sierra. Some of these were added when we first moved to Sierra. Others were added just recently, so I wanted to go over those. There are new fields for holds and finds, and those are available from bib, item, and patron records. So if we go into create lists, I'll just show you those. We'll go into the process of creating a list, but I just wanted to show you something that's not being used here. Okay, and so I'm going to change my view here to a stored record type of item so I could take a look at some of these fields. Let's just say I'm looking at items and I want to look at holds related to those items. What I can do now with these two new tabs, usually in the past, all you had was this one tab of all of the fixed and the variable length fields within Sierra that you could search from. And there's quite a bit more in here as well. Um, but now you could choose a tab for holds. So you could choose, for example, identify whether or not a hold is frozen. I use this for the stale holds report to identify those holds and remove them from the list. You can also identify hold pickup locations, um, the date that the hold was placed. Some of these, for example, at the bottom where you see hold IR, that refers to inReach, and we don't use inReach in our system. So you can just disregard the last two rows here. But everything else is, I think this hold IR is also another one. But anything that doesn't say IR in the title or description is fair game. So you can use any of these fields to identify a hold. This is data that we haven't had access to before, so that was really nice to do. So for example, if let's just say that your clear the hold shelf file gets hosed, and for whatever reason you're not able to get a list of those items, you could run a list of an item level list using that stored record type of item, and then find out, identify your library as hold pickup location and also hold status. So you could use, like for example, the exclamation point is the on hold shelf status, and you could find out what is actually on your hold shelf as far as the system is concerned. So that's one thing you can do now that you would not have been able to do in the past. Same goes with finds. We're looking at it from the item perspective, but these are active finds within the database. Um, so you can get information on when the fine was assessed, the patron record number associated with the fine, the item charge, processing fee. Some of these don't apply to us, but you can also get things like the invoice number, billing fee. The charge code is important because that will identify what type of fine it is. For example, a manual uh, fine versus a overdue fine versus a replacement fine. There are different codes that are associated with those, and those are things that you can look at in the manual to determine what code you would need to use. For example, I think overdues are code 3, something like that, or I believe it's replacements are code 3. So you could put in a search for those and then find all the items that match that particular criteria. So a lot of these things you'll notice are similar to what you would find in if you're looking at a fine view within the patron record. So these are active fines. These are not paid fines. But this is information for active fines that you could look at in the system. And so you can get at it from the item view, but you can also look at it from the patron view if you wanted to store. Let's just say you wanted to store the patron record. You would also have those fields available here. So you can look at all the holds associated with a patron, or any fines associated with patrons that match the criteria you're looking for. And I believe the only field available here for bibliographic records is the holds. There's a whole bunch of leader fields and 008 information up here, but the last tab here for holds would pertain to bibliographic holds. So let me close out of that. The other areas of new fields that we've added, I just go right back in there, are ones that have been around now for a little bit, but I wanted to show you these anyway. These came in with Sierra. Let's just take a look at due date here. There are a couple of new operators for exist and not exist. So we've had to start using these with date fields because if you do something like due date equals nothing, it will give you an error. So you, instead of having, I want items without a due date, you can't do due date equals nothing. You have to do due date not exist. And then that will get you the exact same data set that you would get if you just did equal to nothing. So that's just something you have to consider when you're working with date fields. And along those same lines, the newest additions we have for Sierra is the relative date fields. So those are at the very bottom of your list here. These are brand new. This came in, I think, with our latest upgrade back in August. So you have relative date fields for all these different categories. And by relative date, I mean relative to the date that the file is created. So if I run this list here, what says item due date equals today, it's going to find all the items that have a due date equal to October 22nd. Now, if I save this file and then run it tomorrow, I will get a completely different list of items, obviously, because those items will have a different due date. But that's the real power with these relative date fields, is that you can save it as a query and then run it. You don't even have to change any date fields whatsoever, and just run it at any time that you want, and it will give you information relative to the date that the file is created. So whenever you run this list, it will give you different information. So if we look at the options available, we have equals today and equals yesterday. Those are pretty obvious as to what those are. So you can find out what items were due yesterday or today. There are a couple of options for a range of dates. So if I want to find items due within the last week, I could use this one. Items due within the last month. There's some examples I can use, like for example, patrons with expired records within the last month. So if you could run this on October 1st and find everything for September, that might be a useful report to run, something you could run on a regular basis. And then the last three are focused on exact dates. So is this many days ago? Is this many weeks ago? Is this many months ago? So if I choose due date is this many months ago, I have to put in a numerical value here somewhere. I have to put in 1, 2, some kind of number, 24, but it's going to give me an exact date. It's not going to give me a month's worth of data, so it's not like a range within a month. It's an exact date. So if I run this today, let's see, I would just leave it at 1. It will return, today's October 22nd. It's going to return all items with a due date of September 22nd. So it's looking at an exact date 1 month ago. Uh, so that's what you could do with that. I'm not sure how useful that is, but if you wanted to find something with an exact date this many days ago, weeks ago, or months ago, you can use that relative date field. I think it'd be useful for things that you have a saved query for, particularly within like a range or within the last week or within the last month. I think that's where I would probably find the most use for it. But what's really nice is you can just save this, and tell a staff member, maybe a clerk, run this report or run this query, and you don't have to worry about it getting screwed up because the date is not correct. It would just return whatever is relative to the date it's created. So I think that's pretty useful, and it's something that some people have wanted for a while. So that's the newest addition. The other thing that we've added with Sierra, and I'm sure many of you are probably familiar with this by now, is that there is a function called browse query that was new to Sierra that we did not have in Millennium. And if you change your function here from create list to catalog or search holds, you have to go under tools to see it, but it's this function here called browse query. And what this, it looks like a create list review file criteria entering window, a search window, but it's not any, it works the same way as create list, but it really has a different function. It's for like a quick list that you want to run, but you don't want to retain any of the data beyond what you see in the screen. So for example, if I wanted to find a patron with a particular phone number, I could type in, stored record type of patron, search the entire database, and just do a quick patron telephone has 5555. I think we'll do something like this. Maybe let's do, I think this would come up too. And you, for example, say someone has a phone number that's an error in the database, you could just do a quick search like this. Now you could use save searches or retrieve a saved query, or I'm sorry, use existing searches or retrieve a saved query if you wanted to. But in this case, we're just doing a quick search. And this comes back with a whole bunch of, I don't know why that,
May I have your attention?
excuse me.
The Central
I'm going to mute
Library
myself.
will close in 30 minutes for a special event. In 15 minutes, all public computers.
Okay, sorry about that. So this is a result from a browse query search. You can see a lot of these are my test records that I've created. I don't know why that one's in there. That's really weird. And then there's another one in here that's completely not correct. Oh, it might have been something I was working on with a patron. But anyway, so these are all the patron phone numbers that come up in that search. But as you can see, I can't save any of this stuff. I'm not going to be able to like export the data to Excel or do anything with it. And it's once I click close, that information displayed here is all gone. But in the meantime, what I can do is open up that patron record and make any changes, add a note, do whatever I want to based on my permissions. In this case, I can edit because I've got those permissions. But that'll change. That'll vary based on who's creating the browse query. But that's another nice little feature that you can use if you just wanted to run a quick list but don't want to invest the time in using a review file or something like that. It's just something really quick and ephemeral that you can use. Okay, so let's go into create lists. And I'm going to choose a review file. I'm just going to empty this one here. Okay, so choosing a review file, you want to select the file that you want to use from the list. I'm sure many of you know that already. And the first step is to name your review file. So the first step is to highlight the review file, click on Search Records up above. And generally speaking, we have another insert or piece of information here that will help you create your review file. It's in that same insert we looked at before in terms of file assignments. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see some naming conventions that you can use. It's generally like 4 parts to it. So you could use put in your library, usually a 4-digit abbreviation like TOSA, GRFI for Greenfield, so on and so forth. So you put in your library description, and then a brief description of what the file is, your personal initials, and then the date that the file is created. So a lot of people follow that convention. We'll just use, since we're using Oak Creek here, we're going to use 2015 as our DVDs added to the system since 2015. Put a comment here and then our date. So that's basically all the parts that I would need. The reason we do it this way is because, first of all, I need to identify who's creating these files. And also when I do my cleanup, which I just did in early October, every quarter we remove files that are older than 3 months. I need to be able to identify the dates quickly. There's a created field that I do use to help out, and it's this column here all the way over to the right-hand side of the screen, and you can just sort on that column to find the oldest files. But if I don't see a date field, or it seems like it was just a quick file that people were using, let's just say if you look at file 102 here on the screen, it says NSL. I know it's North Shore Library, but that seems like a really quick file that someone just wanted to run real quick and export the data or look at it, and they don't care about it. If you're putting in more information like 101, where it's Shorewood missing, NS 10.5.15, that indicates to me that you want to keep that information a little bit longer. So the more information you add to these names, the better it is overall. And then the next most important thing, besides thinking about how you're going to conduct or construct your search, is to change the stored record type here. And this is really important for a number of reasons. I think we mentioned before, like if you wanted to search on patron information, you're not going to choose bibliographic as your stored record type. There's no connection there. But this really has a bearing on the fields that you can search of later down here in this criteria area. So if I choose bibliographic as my stored record type, I'm going to be retrieving bibliographic records in my list. However, if because it's bibliographic as a stored record type, there are certain connections that you can assume will be there, and these will become apparent as you look at the type. So if my stored record type here is bibliographic, if I double click this type area, these record types will come up, and these have a direct connection some way, some form to bibliographic records. So orders are attached to bib records, check-in to bib records, item to bib records. The connection between these last three between themselves is irrelevant. They have to have some connection to bibliographic records to make it work. And if I change this to, let's just say, patron records, I double click on type, now I'm just left with patron record fields or item record fields. So I can't search off of bibliographic information or order information from here because there's no connection to those. It's generally speaking, if you're searching patron records, your stored record type is patrons, and you're choosing item as your the field that you want to search off of, the connection between patron records and item records are those patrons who have checked out those items. So any item information that I retrieve off of here, let's just say iType equals 2, those any patrons that come up in this list will have to have checked out an item with an iType equal to 2. So there's a connection, there's a link. And if we look back at our PowerPoint slide here, this slide is older than me, I think, at this point, but this is a really good representation of what some people call the law of one hop. And that basically indicates these links, these connections, they have to be present in order for you to search off of record fields. So if I wanted to search, get order record information, the only link I really have available is bib records, because there's no other links available within the system. Same, and we just looked at bib records. If we look at item records, it's going to be the same deal. If I change this to item records as a stored record type, I double click here, and the only options I have are to search off of our bibliographic and patron record fields in addition to whatever's in the item record. So that's just something to keep in mind. Can get very confusing when you start messing around with your store record type. Most of the collection maintenance that I see, unless you're part of central cataloging here, is related to item records. Now, most of what you are going to be doing as suburban libraries is related to item records, because that's where you want to get most of your data out of is the items, and whatever bibliographic information like format, that all that stuff is going to be available to you, but you're not really concerned about subject headings, and changing those or finding errors in those. You're mostly going to be concerned with item record information. The other thing to consider with these stored record types, and I generally don't suggest using a stored record type of bibliographic information and then searching on item. You can, but it's generally better to do it the other way around, to store your record type as item and then choose bibliographic fields based off of that. The reason I say this is that there is a one-to-many relationship between bibliographic records and item records. So one bibliographic record can have several, several hundred item records attached to it. And if I do something like this, bibliographic stored record type, and I say item location has, or this might be a better one, all fields don't have 24, this isn't going to work in most cases, because what you're telling the software to do is to search for all item records that don't have 24 in the item location field. But that, as long as it matches one of those attached records, it's going to come up in your search. So what you'll end up, I see a lot of people doing this, is they'll search for bibliographic, your stored record type is bibliographic records, put in something related to items within that search, and you'll be frustrated because they keep seeing stuff that they wanted excluded out of their search, but they keep seeing those bibliographic records come up. It's because if there's more than one item record attached to this particular stored record type of bibliographic, as long as there's one that matches the criteria, like you could have 2 items owned by Oak Creek and another one owned by Greendale. Because the one owned by Greendale matches this, it doesn't have an item loc that matches 24, it's still going to appear as something that matches the search. So just something to keep in mind. I don't hear it too much these days, but the safest thing to do is, if you're looking for item record data, choose a stored record type of item and then search off of bibliographic fields to get that data. Sometimes it's a little tricky, but You would generally want to stick with items, patrons, orders, and be really careful when you're searching bibliographic data when it's got attached records to it. Okay, that's a long-winded explanation. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's just say I want to search here for Oak Creek DVDs added since the beginning of 2015. My stored record type is item. These are all going to be item records. My next step is to choose a range. And there are a couple of different options here. The first two are the most popular. The range gives you the first record number entered into the database and the last most current record number entered into the database as the stop number. So you have a start and a stop number. And you can, as you can see, these are able to be edited. There is another insert that we use that we update on a regular basis. That is, let's see, I'll move this guy over here. I'm sorry, it's this one here. And it's called Ranges of Various Record Types by Year. So it's not as important to use this now as it was in the past. Those of you who have been around here for a while can remember that it used to take 4.5 hours to search the entire item record database. So if you ran a file at 8 a.m., it would take you until 12:30 to actually get results from your file. Now it takes like 5 to 10 minutes based on what your search is, sometimes even quicker. But these are still relatively useful because you can pull in, for example, if I wanted to just look at all records added to the database for items, since the beginning of the year, I can just copy and paste this number directly into my query. So I can use this as my start number. But we have all kinds of information here with regard to stop and start numbers for items, bibs, patrons, and all of the current order record number schemes that are being in use by the system. These are libraries that actively have used acquisitions in the recent past. So if you wanted to look for example for Wauwatosa, if you wanted to start looking at orders created since the beginning of 2015, you would just use that this number here. Let me just mute this for a second. Okay, thanks for your patience with this. I guess I'll learn to not schedule this session during Ben Franklin dinner the next time. But in any case, this is where you would find that information for limiting to ranges of various record types. So I can enter that into my start number. I can reduce the amount of time it takes to go through the database, but again, it doesn't take that long to get through it now. The other option for, I'm just going to copy this, make sure we don't get rid of it, is to search off an existing review file. And there's a slight change here that's taken place since our last upgrade as well. First off, when we're looking at range, we're searching the entire database. This is your data set, to be exact. With review files, if you're searching off a review file, you're basically doing what we call searching off of what we call a sublist, or you're creating a sublist off of a current review file. So these data sets, instead of looking at the entire database, are limited to a specific review file that's been previously created. And what's really nice, at least in my estimation, is that you can actually search for these review files by number. So if you know the number of your file, you kind of have to know the number. You can just type it in here. So if you know it's, like 340 or yeah. Let's try another one. 320. You can just type in the number and it will automatically populate that review file in this drop-down menu. Those are the most two. We cover the index and advanced areas in the advanced session. That's going to be in November 11th. So in this case, I'm just going to choose everything added since the beginning of 2015. I'm not interested in searching off a different review file. Okay, and then we get down to the point in which you want to actually create your search string. So we're going to create a search for new DVDs added since to Oak Creek since the start of 2015. So by virtue of putting in this start range, we've taken care of one of those three areas of that Venn diagram. If you remember, we look at that again. So we've taken care of this circle here in the upper left-hand corner. So we still have two other ones. One is Oak Creek items. We have to identify those, make sure that they're part of our search, and also DVD or CD items. So one of them's done. We got two to go. So in this case, we're first going to choose a type of record field we want to limit it to. We're going to choose item record as our type. And once you choose item, then all of the fields available in the item record are available to search on. So we double click here and you can choose the field that you want based on the type that you chose in the first column. So this is context sensitive. In our case, we have fixed fields here at the top, and we also have variable fields below here. And generally, these are the fields you can choose to search off of. And these are going to be context sensitive. If I choose, for example, patrons, I get all the patron record fields that I can search off of as well. One of the things I didn't mention before, but is new to Sierra since last year or when we first got it, was that you can actually search off of things like the postal code, the address, the city name, or the region, which is in our case, the state. All those things are available for us to search on if you want to. Things like last name and middle name, first name, those as we get more and more newer records that use the comma within the name field, these will also be populated. So if you put a comma within a name field, it will automatically segment that data out and put in the first name, last name, and middle name, usually middle initial in our case. But it's all based on putting the comma within the name field. That's how it splits it up. So I'm going to choose item here. The field that I'm going to use is the fixed field to identify the item location. And I know that that is number 79. You'll notice that there's numbers attached to all of these fields or characters. I think there's alphanumeric characters. And you can identify those fields automatically. You don't have to open up a window for each of these. You can just use, for example, I could use item here, tab over to the field and type in 79. And you can get a nice little list that you can use to scroll up and down to find your field that you're looking for. And here's where we're going to talk about some of these Boolean conditions. We'll go through these fairly quickly. I think most of you have seen this before. If not, I'll try to be deliberate with some of the ones that are less common. to see the conditions, these are the connections or Boolean operators that we use to identify the data within these fields. So it's the connection between the data you're looking for and the field that contains the data. So let's take a look here. The first two are pretty self-explanatory, equal to and not equal to. So equal to, let's just say item log equal to 24A, AAB, or ACD.
May I have your attention, please?
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so your equal to condition is going to be, it's obviously we're going to be looking for item logs equal to a specific value. There's no range involved here. It's just a specific item location that we're looking for. And these apply to all fields. So for example, I type, equal to 2, or, item log that we just looked at. What's nice about this is with equals to and not equals to, you can double click on this value area as long as there's a one-to-one relationship. You're just looking for a single code. You can double click on this value A area and it will bring up a list of all the available item logs in this case, or item types, depending on what the field is. So that's only available for equals to and not equals to. Just about anything else, it's not, this value A, if you double click on it, is not going to come up with anything. Equals to you can also use for finding something that doesn't exist. For example, let's just use the I type. If you're looking for errors in your coding, let's just get rid of this. Item type equals to nothing. All of the items in our system have to have an I type. That's the way the circulation works. Even if they're not circulating materials, they have to have an item type in order for the system to work effectively. So finding things like this would find errors in your coding. So that'd be one example of database maintenance if you were to do this and apply it to your own records. The opposite is also true. I'm going to go take a look at this one. I'm going to bring up another window here. Let's just say I'm taking a look at patron records. I could use the not equal to, and I use this all the time, to find fields that don't exist that well, actually, in this case, we're using a double negative for not equal to. So patron email address not equal to, this is I could do it this way. Just click on not equal to, nothing. If I keep that one blank, it's using a double negative to find fields that do have content within them. So I don't care what the email address is. I just want to know that it exists, and I want it to include those patron records as part of my search. I do this for when we send out courtesy notices for when patron cards are about to expire. So I need to find, like for example, I think it's down here in file 346. If we look at show info here, I'm looking at all these patron records that are expiring in October, and I just want to find the ones that have email addresses. I can just look at patron email address not equal to nothing. And if I look at all of these records, all of these will have email addresses within them. So of the 6,600, roughly half have email addresses attached to the record. So just one example where you could use that in practice. Okay, we'll go back to our other area here. You can use greater than and less than that condition here. So if we chose greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, you could use these. There's a great with numbers, anything to do with something that can be counted, like checkouts, money owed, anything that's a numeric function.
The library is now closed.
So those are great with numbers and anything that can be counted, but they're not good. And let's just take a look. We'll use item price. This would be great for like finding all your items that are over $20 in value, if you want to do something like that. But if you were to use these with dates, it would cause a huge problem. And I'll explain why this would be the fact. I think we do something more like this. If you use greater than or less than conditions with dates, it can be a huge issue, specifically with due dates or any date field that can be blank. If I ran this search right here, it would overrun this review file. We currently have 5,000 max records. This would be filled with all kinds of records in no time. It would fill it up. We wouldn't be able to go past 5,000, mostly because the due date, when you do things like this, it also considers anything with a blank date as less than 10/1/2015. So that's just something that you have to keep in mind when you're working with dates. Dates are just problematic to begin with, but you just need to know how to work around them. If I were to do this type of search, I want to find everything with a due date less than 2015, or I'm say 10/1/2015, I would do a range search. So we would do something like, sorry, having problems today. Guess I gotta select this. Okay, there we go. 1991. I use a date that's really insanely far in the future, as long as it's an actual date. And then I find that this range will bring back everything I wanted from my previous search, anything less than 10/1/2015. So it's just something you got to keep in mind when you're using greater than or less than. That's something that's come up in the past. The most popular condition that we use is, just blank these out here, is the has condition. And that's identified by the letter H. And that basically indicates that whatever you're looking for in this field has to match, the value A has to be contained somewhere within the item loc field. And this is really important because you need to use has instead of equals for retrieving item locations. If I wanted to find everything at Wauwatosa, this type of search would not work, because the item loc is equal to this particular field. It's not going to return anything that it's got 34A, 34C, 34Y. It's only going to return items with an item loc equal to exactly this piece of code, so 34. If I use has and do the same thing, then it's going to find anything that's got 34 within it. And because all of our location codes are pretty distinct, other than Brown Deer and North Shore and Central, using this will retrieve all of the item records for Wauwatosa based on the fact that that 34 is very unique to anything Wauwatosa owns. If I was from Brown Deer, I would have to do another range search. So I'd have to start out with 6A and 6ZZZ. And that would give me all my Brown Deer items because these are unique. It's almost like a range search. Starts out with A and then ends with Z. So anything between this range would return the correct item locations. In our case, we're going to be using Oak Creek. So we're using item loc has 24. Get rid of that thing there. So we have another piece of our Venn diagram that is going to be taken care of. So we've got our items added since the start, let's say 2015 here, and Oak Creek items. So both of these two are now taken care of. So we now have one other one that we have to add. So we've looked at some of the other, let's just add another line here. Some of these other conditions that I wanted to talk about. We've addressed between. So you have between and not within. So if you wanted to find things that were between 6A and 6ZZZ, you would use this between condition. If you didn't want to find those items, you would use the N condition, which would be not within. So it's basically the opposite of that between range is find anything not within 6A and 6ZZZ. A couple of other ones. These are relatively new. Item loc starts with, you could put 24 here. This would actually match the same criteria as the one above it. So 1 and 2 are pretty much going to find the same things. And you could use this as a replacement for number 1 here, but in our case, it doesn't make any difference. We can use has. And you can use the $sign to find ends with. So if you wanted to find something that, let's just say you're from Milwaukee and you want to find, or if you're in a system where everything, your location codes are ordered or structured in a way in which they all end in the same character or a group of characters, you could use something like this, 24 ACD or something like that, or CD. Say you wanted to find everything that ended with ACD, YCD, CCD, JCD, whatever. You could use that function as well with this, and it would find all those. The other ones that we've covered already are exist and not exist, and then the relative date fields. And those, as we've shown before, are just used with dates and are relative to the date the file was created. Okay, so we'll get rid of this line here. So we're down to one other area of our statement that we have to create. And to do that, we're going to use these buttons here on the side. When you insert a line, it's going to insert it above the current term that you're using. So if I click on insert here, it's going to put it on top. And I can delete that line using this delete button here. If I wanted to append it below, I would just click on this append a line button. And that's what I generally do. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to be adding another line here or two to identify the material type for DVD and CD. So in our case, since I'm connected to item records here, I can actually search off of fields in the bibliographic record. So I can double click here, choose bibliographic, and then say I want the mat type of 30. So that's 30 is the code used for mat type. And then we would want to make this equal to H DVD. So that'll get us all of our DVDs. And let's just add CDs to the mix here. These will be music CDs. In order to search for those mat types, I would just append another line here. Do the same thing, choose B for bibliographic, 30 for mat type, and then equal to C for music CD. And those are all the statements that I need to make it work. However, there's one other step that we need to do. First off, if I ran this right now, it would not work, mostly because I've got statements 2 and 3 here they cannot coexist at the same time. So if I'm looking for items that have a mat type of H, they cannot also have a mat type equal to C. They're mutually exclusive. They have to have one or the other. So in this case, I'm going to change the operator to OR, and then that should work, right? You would think in most cases, but that's not the case. It's not how the logic works. What's going to happen if I run this search is it's going to find everything with an item loc of 24 and DVD. So those two would work. I would find all the Oak Creek DVDs, but then I would find all of the music CDs in the system, regardless of who owns them. So it would just attach all those records, and I would run out of space really quick. In order to make this work, what I would have to do is to group lines 2 and 3 together. And in order to do that, what you have to do is hold down your Shift key on your keyboard, click line 2. In this case, you'll see both of them are selected. And then this button called Group will line up. And what you end up doing is somewhat similar to what's would be a mathematical formula. And the way it works is similar to that. It's using the Boolean logic where everything within the parentheses is done first and then ANDed to everything outside of it. It's very similar to like a mathematical computation. So we would find everything with a mat type of DVD or CD in the system, and then add it to Oak Creek items. So it would find all those Oak Creek items that have either of those two mat types, and that's the way you would have to phrase it. If I wanted to get rid of one of these lines, I could choose the delete button or clear everything out altogether. I don't want to do that here. So let's go ahead and there's one other thing I wanted to show you here. If I wanted to save this as a query, I could save this information to the database and then retrieve it at some later point if I wanted to run this search again. So say at the end of the year, I wanted to run this again and see how many DVDs or CDs I added. You can click on the Save button here. Oops. Let's try this again. And that should work. We'll just try it. We'll try that again, see if we can make it work. And it's going to ask me to save the query and say yes. So now it's not saved to my local workstation. It's actually saved on the server, and I can pull that down whenever I want to use it. So now if I try to run this search, see if this is going to allow me to do it. Okay, well that's strange. Let me go back to my list here. I think I had that dot or the period in front, so it wasn't going to allow me to do that. So let's go ahead and click on search again. And you can see there's, I've got 900 records that have been retrieved by that search. There's a couple things you can do while the search is running. It moved too quickly for me to actually do anything, but you can, while the search is running, if it becomes obvious that you did something wrong in your search query, you can click on that cancel button. But like I mentioned before, it actually empties the file completely, and you really don't have any reference to what you had entered before. The best thing to do now is to just let it run its course, and if it doesn't find anything, it'll complete fairly quickly, and you can just use that save search area to run your search again. There's another way you can do that as well. The other thing that you can do after the search is run, you can click on Show Info. This will show you the criteria that you use to run your search. You can see these are stored record types of item, all of the things that we have put in before. If I wanted to show the records, I click on this button up right next to it. So let's just take a look. This looks like it might be a good one. Okay, so this is our item record that we've retrieved here. We take a look at it. The item loc is equal to, has 24 in it, so we know it's an Oak Creek item. It was created on January 15th, 2015, so it was added to the system at that point. So that matches another one of our criteria. And if we look at the bibliographic record information, it is a music CD. So all three of those pieces of our Venn diagram matches that small part in the middle that we needed to. Not sure if I see any DVDs yet, but let's see. Yeah, here we go. So this is Paddington. One of the irritating things with Create List right now is that the when you retrieve these records, you're automatically sent to the summary view instead of going straight to the record. Like when it's working correctly, this is what you'll see instead of the summary view of that particular bib record. And this should be fixed in the next release that we go to. So this one is also owned by Oak Creek. It's got it was created on 4/28/2015, owned by Oak Creek, and it is a DVD. So it's got that mat type. So all of these look correct. This would be something we could run a list off of. There's one other function for those of you not familiar with it. If we go to search records again, say you screwed up something, you can go search records, say yes to override the contents. Just say, everything's gone here. But if I wanted to redo this search and put in a different, like a start number or something like that, I could click on Use Existing Search, go to File 108 because I know that's the file that we used, and then I can just use that search. The only requirements for this, and this is a great way to do this if you're trying to recreate the search and use different coding. You can use existing search, but it has to be a search that's been completed. You can't use something that's been suspended or anything like that. It's got to be completed. But this is another way that you can run a search over and over. I do this a lot when I'm doing, for example, some of these master lists, like the stale holds list is a good example. If I go there, choose 82. Click on search that. I mean, it's all blank here, but I know the file number is 82. I can just go down here, change the dates here, and I may start using these relative dates. All I do is change the dates, make sure the stop number is the latest, and the way to do that is just hit the I button, and it will populate with the latest record number available for items. So that's all I do for that file, and I just change the dates, and then I'm good to go. So you can also do sorting of records. So if we'll go down to my file 108 here. Let's just say I wanted to sort these by title. You'll see that you'll get two columns here, one for type and then one for the field. So it works the same way as the first two columns in the criteria statement. So I want to sort these by title. I know that's going to be a bibliographic field, so I just double click that, and then I can choose title from the list of variable fields here. So these are all going to be sorted alphabetically by title. And again, you can also save this sort. For example, say you had like 3 or 4 or 5, 6 different types of sorting that you wanted to save. You can apply a save sort to this particular list, and it would just populate it with whatever's saved on the server. So if I click on that, it's going to change the status to sorting. Since we have 900, it's not going to take very long. But it's sorting all of these records by bibliographic title. Okay, so now it's completed. And what you have here is a list sorted by alphabetically by title. And you can use any fields that you wanted to if you wanted to do sorting. I tend to use the sorting functions in Excel more than I do in Sierra, but it's still available for you. Okay. So I wanted to, now that we have our review file, I want to talk a little bit about exporting that data. Back in the day, before we had the function to export, a lot of people used to use list records, and that still is available here, but this is more for printing off the data directly to your attached printer. So if I wanted to click on list records, I could type in the fields that I want, and each one of these rows is going to print off on your printer, basically like so if I put in bib, record number, pen a couple more here, bib, title, and maybe that's all I need. Or if I want to put, maybe I'll add something from the item record, item, call number, something like that. So if I wanted to print off that data, I could use the list records button here. I could put a page heading in here, new Oak Creek media, something like that. And I can choose the start and ending record here if I want. Number of blank lines between records could be like 2. I can number the records in the list and choose all these different areas that I wanted to. I usually don't play around with this too much, but you can test these out to see if they would work. But generally, I don't use the list records function. We use the export records. And it's very similar to list records in terms of the information that you can get out of the system. So if you see your type and your field are still the same. So we'll export the exact, we'll put in record data or record number. And we'll do item call number. So just a quick list here to see, we can get this data into Excel and mess around with it. A couple of the things that you may want to be aware of. When you export this data, you have a couple of options here. This is going to go straight into Excel. So you could use comma as your field delimiter. This is the character that's going to be inserted between all 3 of our columns, record number, title, and call number. So comma is very a common delimiter field to use. If you wanted to use tabs instead, which is in some cases desirable, particularly when you're working with titles, you may want to just use control character 9, and that will put a tab between all of these fields, so it will be easier to work with. So I'm going to use the tab here just to show you how that works. And you'll see that's how it's going to look like. You can also save these export fields as well. I do a lot of that. I'll save the exports to the server and then bring those back in when I need them. And then here at the very bottom, you would just click on Browse to choose to save your file. So we're going to name this. We're not going to name it a text file. We'll just call it, I guess it doesn't matter. A text file is fine. So let's just use Oak Creek Media 2015. And let's just put this in Create List Training. Okay, so that's the folder that this file is going to be created in when I hit OK. And when I click OK here on the screen, it's going to take a few, maybe a half a minute or so, depending on what data I'm exporting. It's creating that file and putting it on my local computer. Okay, so now if I want to look at that file, all I have to do is go to Excel. I'm opening up Excel on my computer here. And I'm going to go to the Data tab, and I'm going to choose the option to get external data from text. When I click on that, it's going to open up a dialog box so I can select the file. And I know my file is located in this Create List Training 2015 folder. That's what I named it before. And I just click on the Import button. And then you get this little text import wizard that you've probably seen before. You want to use the delimited option because we use tabs to delimit our data. And it automatically has tabs selected here at the top, and you can see that that will work because all of my data is separated by tabs. You can do a lot more manipulation of the data, but because we're using text here for the most part, you can just click on Finish, and that will import the data into your database, or I'm sorry, your Excel file. Okay, so what we have here is a list of all those records sorted by title into Excel, and then I can start working with this. If I wanted to create a list, maybe do some deduping of sorts because a lot of these might have duplicate copies. You can see number 8 and number 9 on the list is probably 2 item records connected to the same bib record. And there is a function actually for that. You can use this remove duplicates function. So let's see if I can do this. Okay, so all these can contain duplicates. So I'm just going to click on OK. 59 duplicate values were found and removed. 842 unique values remain. So those ones that were in 8 and 9 are now removed, and you're just left with 1. So just some of the things you can do in Excel that you just can't do in Sierra. And I probably wouldn't want to do it in Sierra, frankly. It's got other things to worry about. So that's just a real quick way in which you can manipulate the data in Excel. Okay, and before we kind of wrap up here, I just wanted to cover one other area, and that is the MCFLIS master list. This is another link off of that Create List webpage that we have. And this is just a list of all the master lists that we currently create. Diane's no longer here, but these are all created by Kate. Anything that says Diane is created by Kate. So we have, the reason that these were created is, again, it took forever to get through item lists or patron lists. In the past, it would take half a day. So we created these master lists so you wouldn't have to to do that, and they're still useful because you know the data is going to be fairly accurate. And we run these on a monthly, weekly, or quarterly basis, in some cases annually. But these are lists that you have at your disposal if you wanted to, for example, run your calf lag J list. That one is always run and is available in file 64 for all libraries, and you would just run a sublist off of that review file to search for your particular items. We have the stale holds list, which is always in file 82, and that is run every Friday morning. So you can run your stale holds off of that. And I have to thank Shelly because she always tells me if it's not working. Sometimes it stalls, and I can always count on Shelly telling me if it's there or not. So thank you, Shelly. The other ones that might be useful are the long overdue monthly list. And I always send out an email when that is finished, and that's always about the first day of the month. So these are items that are overdue at least 1 year. And of course, probably the most popular one that we use is the 5-year no circ list. And that one is it's actually a lot better than it used to be in terms of file size. The one that is large right now, and I'm hoping that people will, you may talk about it at LDAC, is this possible patron deletes file in file 359. So if we take a look at that one, we'll take a look at both 280 and 359. So 280 is the master no circ 5-year list, and this is actually quite a bit smaller than it used to be. It used to be closer to 300,000 or over 300,000 records. But because of purges that have been done by the libraries, including MPL and others, it's down to a much more manageable size. So these are all items in the system that have not circulated in at least 5 years. They have to be circulating to begin with. So reference books don't count. And things that are newer than 5 years also wouldn't count in this list. So considering the size of our system, that's actually a fairly good number. The one that concerns me is the one in 359, which is, oh, I don't have it here, sorry. Where is that one? I think I had to put it in a larger list. You can sort by login. You can find your own stuff too. That's very helpful. Okay. See if we can find this one. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, it's in 279. And this one has grown exponentially. This used to be closer to 20,000 records and is now 142,000. A lot of these are MPL patrons, but there are other libraries that haven't cleared these out, and there's reasons for that. You may not want to get rid of these patrons because they owe money. That's probably the biggest reason. But that's something that, if you have the ability to purge those at some point, it's always a good thing. So anyway, those are master lists that we create for MICFLIS libraries so that they can run those on their own. Okay, let me go back to my slide here. Okay, so that's MICFLIS master lists. We can go through the exercises if you like. The one thing I wanted to do before we got into those was to talk about the fact that we're going to be doing SQL training again next March. I know it's really early to consider that, but March 30th. And I can't speak highly of SQL enough. I'm still learning about it myself, but it's such a powerful tool to get reports. We'll be running reports for the libraries that use SQL queries against the Sierra database. But you may have staff or you may have reports that you want to run that are very specific to what your library needs. And so you have the ability to get that data out of there if you run SQL queries. And you've done this training that we're going to be doing in March. We held one back in March of this past year as well. So there's people out there have looked at this before, although I don't get the sense that there's a lot of people that have the time or patience to be able to run those things. So we're happy to do that here at MICFLIS, but we also want to open it up so that people can actually do this on their own and not have to, wait for MICFLIS to run a report for them. That's kind of the idea. But if you're interested, that'll be run on March 30th of next year, and it's like almost like a 3-hour session that we do on training for that. And once the training's complete, then you get access to the SQL database, with a login. So some of you may have done that already, and I think most of you have probably done that. But if you know staff or people that might need that and haven't done it yet, that would be a good opportunity, or if you just need a refresher. I'm learning about things all the time with SQL, so the session that we ran in this past March is going to resemble very little what we did in the it's not going to resemble anything we're going to do in March of 2016. Okay, so I'm just curious to know, is for those of you out there, are you interested in doing some exercises, or do you have any questions that you would like? Let's throw that out first. Do you have any questions that you have about the information we just talked about here, or perhaps a situation that you need to address? I think it's best if you use the chat interface at the bottom. It's just easier for folks to keep things straight. So if you have a question, just go ahead and put it in the chat interface at the bottom of your GoToMeeting console. I'll give you a few minutes to write those in. Okay, Shelly has a question here about purchase alerts. That's a really good question. Let's go into that. Create list, or Sierra, I should say, has a function. It's actually an automated report for purchase alerts that's based on criteria that we specify. The way that it's created is that, let's just find, they're always in file 119 and 120. And all that we do here at MICFLIS is basically copy the file from, let's move things around here. We copy a system file directly from the server into any one of these two slots, whatever is older. So like, for example, tomorrow, Kate is going to copy the latest purchase alerts into file 119. So I'll just give you an example. If you copy, click on the copy button, you can copy an existing review file into an open slot, or perhaps something that you're using already. And everything prior to file 360 is just going to be a review file. That's, your typical stuff, everything that you're used to creating. So like file 354, if I wanted to copy that in a 119, I could do that. But you'll notice after 360, there are things like purchase alerts, items on the hold shelf, items on search, items with holds, overdue items. That's another system file we use. And so we basically just copy that file, purchase alerts, into file 119. So it's really that's all that we're really doing here. And the purchase alerts criteria are, I had to look and see exactly what I looked at it at one point, and it was very simplistic. It was like, it's basically a file that would just identify bibliographic records with so many holds versus the number of orders that were attached. So if there was, let's just take a look at one of these. And these might not be useful. Let's take a look at the latest one. That's probably going to be more useful. Okay, so this has got a lot of items on it. So, but I think it's the ratio of holds to, oh, that's not right. It's the number of items attached to a record, but I don't think it has anything, I'm sorry, the number of holds attached to a record, but I don't think it has anything to do with a ratio of any sort. This whole purchase alert thing predates our other list here that we use for high demand holds. So purchase alerts are kind of outdated now. We still put them out there, but they're not as flexible as high demand holds where you're using ratios for either the system or your particular pickup location. Like for example, the purchase alerts don't have anything to do with pickup locations. It doesn't identify those as being relevant in any way. But this does. Like you can set your own thresholds for Wauwatosa, West Dallas, what have you. And then it would just, based on those thresholds, you have either 5-to-1 or 10-to-1 or whatever, it'll pull up these titles that you should probably look at ordering, things like that. I don't know if that answers your question, Shelley. Okay, great. Does anyone else have any questions that we can address? Maybe something specific about Crate List that's been bugging you, maybe a set of criteria that you're not able to get to work. And if you do have that question, I mean, we can address it now, but we can also talk about it afterwards. I'm more than happy. In fact, I really like helping people develop these searches so that they can just run them on their own whenever they want to. So doesn't, what I'm saying is it doesn't have to happen right now. We can address those at some other point if you want to. Okay. We've got time here for a few of these exercises before we wrap up, and just to kind of put some of this in perspective, maybe give it a little bit more practical application for you. It's hard for me sitting at McFliss Ivory Tower to sometimes know what you guys really need to search on. I kind of get a sense sometimes talking with folks what they need, but let me just use a couple of practical examples I know that occur at the library level. So let's take a look at those. And what you can do is maybe just type in your answer in the chat interface, and we can go over these. Okay, so the first one is fairly common, especially with teleforms. Someone's cell phone number must be listed as another patron's number in Sierra because the cell phone patron is getting calls to pick up material at Central by mistake. So they may, in some cases, may not even be a patron of the system, and they're getting phone calls from teleforms because someone forgot to change a number or put the wrong number in their record. And I get this a lot. How can I find what patron has this particular phone number? The number is 555-5556. Anybody have any ideas? There's a couple ways to do this. Anybody have any ideas about how we could get that information out of Sierra, either using crate lists or some other method? Okay. Well, Shelley's got the right view of this. The other way you could do it would be to just create a list. But I think we covered this before. The best way to do this would probably be to create a browse query. So to do that, I think we just went through it. I'm not sure if we need to cover it again, but you would do the browse query here. It's a different phone number, so we'll do it. So patron, type in the number for telephone, which is P201. This has changed, by the way. It used to be T or P for telephone 2. And because I don't want to use an exact search on here, I don't want to use an equals, I'm going to use has. I can do 555-5556. And this should get me my search. So if I click on search here, should take a second or two, and it brings up my record here because I put in 555-5556 as my telephone number. So I'm the guilty culprit, and I need to change my phone number. In this case, what I generally recommend is having like a patron message put in here. Patron, please provide new phone sh at McFliss, and then I'll take out the phone number and then say, in the message here, you have to identify the phone number that's wrong, or else I'll just keep putting the same one back in the record. So that's important to be able to do that. So that's generally the practice I would use for that type of thing. So that was very that was a good answer. The other way you could do it is just create a list and then find it that way, but that would just take longer. And it's the same basic principle at work here. Okay, this one's a little bit more complicated. Exercise 2 is, how do I create a list of items at Wauwatosa that are 5 weeks overdue and get information on the item and the patron who checked the item out? This will take a little bit more thinking, but does anyone have any ideas? Let's keep it to, what fields would I be searching on? What's my stored, well, first of all, what's my stored record type? And what fields would I be searching on to get this information? Okay, let's break this down then step by step, kind of using our, pulling out keywords from this to identify what areas we need to look at. So I want to create a list of items at Wauwatosa, so that the one that should, okay, here's Linda's. Sorry, didn't give you enough time. Linda says search for Wauwatosa items, due between dates, and then patron number. Yep, it's very, that's pretty much what I was going to suggest. So let's just kind of walk through that. This is the way that I would do it, but there's different, obviously there's different ways to do this. Let's choose file 121 here. Yeah, maybe not. We'll choose file 90, 102. Okay, so we're going to click on search records. We'll do TOSA overdue items. So I think the stored record type, we go back to our thing here. I want to create a list of items. So I don't want to create a list of patrons. I want to create a list of items that are 5 weeks overdue. So our stored record type is going to be items. So that makes sense. We're not worried about, when the record was added to the database. So we're just going to keep this alone and select the entire database. And so the first thing we're going to do is, since we're really concerned really with the identity of the items and when they were due, we can choose item. Not really concerned about patron information at this point, limiting it to certain patrons, but can choose the item information. So the item due date, we could use the greater than condition, but that wouldn't work. We already know that. So we could choose, there's a couple different ways we can do this. If you want things that were exactly 5 weeks overdue, you could use that relative date condition. Is this many weeks ago? And then say 5. And you could run this search anytime you want and just get everything that was due 5 weeks ago exactly. But I think the context in this question is you want to find everything within a range of dates. So in this case, we'll use within, and we'll choose our insanely early date. And then 5 weeks ago, which would be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, September 17th, I believe. I think that's the context here, that are 5 weeks overdue. So I guess you could say that at least 5 weeks overdue. It depends on the context. If you want exactly 5 weeks overdue, you could use that relative date condition. If you want everything that was at least 5 weeks overdue, you could use the range condition. So I guess that's a bad question on my part. But let's choose that relative date condition just to make it interesting. So we'll choose at least, so the due date was exactly 5 weeks ago, but we're looking at the entire database. We want this limited to TOSA items. So we're going to put in another statement here for item location has 34. So these are all items owned by Wauwatosa that are due exactly 5 weeks ago. So let's do a quick search on that. And while this is running, I can just show you that it already went. Okay, so we have exactly 10 items that were overdue on, I believe, 9/17/2015. So if we look at these, we got to go through this stuff again. So we'll find Wauwatosa item. Okay, and it's, as you can see, it's checked out on 8/27, due on 9/17. It's exactly what we want. If we choose, in order to navigate between records in a review file, you can also use the control bracket. So if you can see a visual representation of that up here, if you do next record, so control close bracket, and then previous records can control open bracket. So it's basically control bracket will get you to the next record. Shelley had just had a question here about how many weeks is the item mark billed? It depends on what the search period is. For 3-day items, it's really quick. It goes from basically 14 days after the item is due, it gets queued up to be billed. So it'll generate it'll come up on the statement of charges, and they'll be assessed that replacement fine after 14 days. For 7-day and 21-day items, it's generally a month after they get that first overdue notice, within 14 days, and then 14 days after that, it'll go into build status. So it's generally a pretty quick turnaround time to get to build status. So the last overdue that was generated for this one was, as you can see, 10/16. It's generally a month after that, and that was when this is a 3-week item. So that item went into build status on October 16th. So it's generally, like that 4-week period. Let's see if we look at because that was a Friday. The item was due on the 17th, and that's roughly 4 weeks after that took place. So if we go to the next item here, let's just go through the list. Hopefully you can get it to work. Okay. Let's see, that's summary. Okay, this is the next. Okay, this is also due on 9/17. So it looks like our list is really good. So we'll just work with this list. We'll assume that that's going to be a good list to work with. So all these items were due on 9/17 are owned by Wauwatosa. So if we want to export data related to that list, say we wanted to contact these patrons for whatever reason, maybe it's like 2 months overdue instead of 5 weeks, and you wanted to contact those patrons and say, look, where's our material? You could do export records and then choose any of the patron information related to this. So because it's an item list, I have access to any patron information that has some connection to that item. It has to be checked out to that patron, a build to that patron. So I could do a patron name, patron address, bib title, and maybe item call number, something like, maybe the item barcode. Yeah, anything that would just, create an Excel file where you can do like a mail merge and say, this is the patron information I want, and I wanted to export it to, like a mail merge operation and send something out directly to that patron. So you could do that, using these fields, and because you have access to all this information, you can do that. So, yeah, that's a really good way to look at that one. I don't think you could do it any other way. I think that's the way it would work. Okay, does anybody have any other questions, or else I think we're ready to wrap up. Well, thank you. I appreciate everybody taking part in this. I know it's a fairly small group, but things will be changing with Create Lists as we go along here. Hopefully more functionality will be added, but they've added quite a few things already with Sierra. So I hope that this has been helpful, some of the new things that have been added. And by all means, if you have any questions about creating a list or need help getting data in any way, shape, or form out of Sierra, I'd be happy to help. I love doing it. It's part of the job that I really like, is extracting data and putting it in a form that people can use. So thanks, everybody. And by all means, contact me if you need any help. Thanks.